strike with a puff of smoke coming out of the engine. And these engines, these CFM 56 engines, are tested with frozen birds thrown into them. And so we don't see smoke coming out of the engine afterwards. We can assume that the engine, it chewed it up and spit it out. Now, if they did have to shut down that engine, 737s are built so redundant. It can fly on one engine. So the electrical system, the hydraulic system, all of them have backups, if not duplicate, triplicate. So that would not in itself cause a problem either.
The person that spoke before me raises this as a main question: why they did not deploy the landing gear? Now, we all know that the aircraft suffered a bird strike, which may take it off one of the engines. However, even if without an engine, the landing gear should have been deployed. Now, even if you don't have the hydraulics, there is a mechanism inside the cockpit which can drop the landing gear by gravitation. The pilot should just pull a couple of levers, and this is typical in many airplanes, and definitely this plane had it. Why they did not deploy it is very complex. Maybe they were very busy trying to keep the aircraft afloat, after the bird strike. Maybe they were distracted by something else. But this is very...
That is not likely. I've come to the conclusion, Brianna, that it was the intention of that flight crew to have the landing gear up. And you may ask why. Well, if that aircraft had lost both engines, and it was, for all intents and purposes, a glider, they would have been trying to preserve as much glide distance as possible. And in order to do that, you don't want to put your flaps down, and you don't want to put your gear down, because that reduces the amount of distance you can fly without power. So is it possible that on short final to the runway, bird strike, they aborted the landing, and as they're going around to set up for another one and troubleshooting the loss of that engine, the other engine failed in some manner, and suddenly they had no power. And if they were in that situation, they would have done exactly what they just did, which would turn around to the opposite end of the runway and try to come in like a glider, and you would not want to put the gear down or the flaps down. Now, the tricky part in this scenario is that when you're coming down that fast, there's a thing we call ground effect in aviation. It's kind of like a cushion of air, and that causes the aircraft to float as it gets closer to the ground. And so they landed very fast, which was the intent, of course, but very far down the runway. Now, that would probably be okay at a lot of airports, but at this particular airport, unfortunately, there was this reinforced concrete berm, which was the foundation of an important antenna for the instrument landing system. And so when they overran the runway, because they were fast and long, they smashed into that berm, causing that huge fireball, killing all but 2 people. So that's my scenario at the moment. It's the only thing that makes sense to me, because there's no reason that gear should have been up unless the crew wanted. I do, and that's the saddest part of this. The antenna that they ran into are supposed to be what we call frangible antenna. In other words, they break away when the aircraft hits them. Most airports are designed this way. This one, they prop them up on a reinforced concrete berm covered with turf. And they did not have the engineered materials arrestor system, which is kind of like concrete that is kind of like a creme brulee surface. And when the airplane hits it, it kind of sinks in and it arrests its forward motion. 112 runways in the U.S. have this stuff, including LaGuardia Airport, incidentally. It would have been a good thing to have that there as well.